What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Roots. So I'm going to review the soundtrack to the Freddy vs. Jason movie. Basically, this is the Freddy vs. Jason soundtrack, and it came out in the summer of 2003. The thing about this particular product is Freddy vs. Jason. That was kind of a heralded movie. Freddy vs. Jason was kind of a touted movie back when it came out back in 2003. There was a lot of hype about it just because of the fact that it was Freddy Krueger versus Jason from Friday the 13th. Some of those type pitches as far as that particularly went along with it. Just a clash of getting two demonic titans facing off in a movie as far as that pitch can happen with it. It was a pretty big deal back in the mid-late 2000s as far as that pitch can happen, but the soundtrack to the movie is kind of here and there. I mean, I like this particular soundtrack. It does have some good quality stuff on here. I'd have to say a lot of good manic energy. There are some songs that are kind of repeat songs from other albums, like unfortunately Mushroom Head and El Nino and Power Man 5000, and I want to say even Seether has some songs that are already on their albums as far as that pitch kind of particularly happens with it. But there are some exclusive songs on here to a certain extent of a degree. Not to say I don't feel like this project is as much of a bad project as much as it is of a haphazard one. I'd have to suppose in particular just because it could have used a few more exclusives. At least like the song, I would have to say the Stone Sour exclusive is pretty damn good. Definitely in particular the Sepultura exclusive is pretty damn good on here. The Blank Theory exclusive is pretty good on here. Spawn Shank and Killswitch Engage are some pretty nice ones on here. It's just kind of the concept that some of the bigger names, unfortunately, are just kind of repeat songs from other albums just within that pitch. But this is a pretty manic album. Definitely the thing about Freddy vs. Jason is these are two horrorcore type freaks as far as that particular pitch kind of goes along with it. Freddy Krueger and then Jason. So it's just kind of the concept of getting some of this. Like most of this music, originally I was thinking it was going to be different, but it's just kind of the concept. A lot of this is just going to be like fight music in like a metal sense. It's kind of some Hell in the Cell type stuff just within that relative pitch as far as that kind of goes along with it. Just a lot of good, gets things started, kind of party starting type tunes just within a relative manic, kind of more festive and just kind of carnivorous type sense. It's a very carnal, it's a very carnivorous type album. I'd have to suppose in particular. Definitely the energy on here is going to be more shredding and just overall manic, just headbanging type stuff. Perfect fit for bands like Slipknot and Mushroom Head and some of those type folks. I'd have to say in particular just within that relative sense. Maybe some more folks like Attack Attack, but Attack Attack was more emo, but just within the relative sense, I feel like Rob Zombie probably should have been on this particular product. Marilyn Manson would have definitely been a pretty good fit. There's just some folks like that that probably would have been just a pretty well induced type situation. But this particular movie soundtrack did not have a single for it, which is kind of unfortunate because it probably could have used it. I definitely think the thing about the Freddy vs. Jason movie was when it came out, it kind of got some bunk type scores as far as that pitch kind of happened with it. I just would have to say in particular, it was just kind of the concept that it was more for like the hardcore type sense. If you're a fan of horror and stuff like that, and just overall more manic and just kind of, there's a word I'm looking for that's not horror, just within particular, but I can't really remember it at this particular stage. But if you like Rob Zombie type movies, stuff like that, some of those type pitches, just more in like a horrific type sense and more of like shredding kind of demonic type stuff, some of those type pitches, this is a good quality type movie. I would definitely have to say it's just kind of like House of Wax, some of those type movies, some of those type pitches, typical kind of scream queen type fare to some of those type pitches kind of gets. It's a good concept. I do remember seeing Freddy vs. Jason back in the day. It was kind of a pretty good movie just within that sense. But I'd have to say this soundtrack is pretty fitting towards it just because it keeps up with the manic energy of this particular film. And this is kind of the fact that the biggest names on here don't really drop exclusive. So it's just kind of the concept when you look after it. Like Slipknot kind of drops like somewhat of a dud of a song on here. About half the album kind of has like some degree of duds. Like I do recommend this project, but it's just kind of the concept out of 20 songs, which is quite a beefy amount on this particular project. About half the album is songs that I don't recommend, and then on top of that, there's some songs on here that are just kind of on the album that was around the time when this soundtrack came out. So it's just kind of the concept. Now, Bombshell is at least kind of one that I could give to the soundtrack just because the Power Man 5000 album, Anyone for Doomsday, didn't really come out in 2001 when it was supposed to. That was a canceled album, so you can basically find it here if you don't want to buy this song digitally. It's kind of a pseudo exclusive to this particular product. So I would give that one a point for that particular. Concept. But I look after it like there are some ones on here that are kind of here and there, like Mushroom Head. You can find the Mushroom Head song Sun Doesn't Rise on like their particular album from 2003. And How Can I Live is off of El Nino's 2003 album. I want to say they dropped an album in 2003. I want to say that they dropped like an album in 2001, 2003, 2005. I remember El Nino a little bit. I was going to review them back in the day, but I just never got around to it, or maybe I did. Don't really remember, but I do remember the song How Can I Live. It's a pretty good song. And like Seether, the Out of My Way song is kind of on the Disclaimer. It's kind of on their 2004 album. I think it's called Disclaimer, something like that. I don't remember wholesomely what it's called, but I'd say in particular. And Then of course Nothing Face kind of had the song Ether on their particular album that was around that particular time. So it's this kind of concept about it. But yeah, like when I looked on Wikipedia, it said that there's like 14 songs on this particular album that are exclusive to this particular soundtrack. It's just kind of the unfortunate thing that some of these songs that are on here are just kind of more haphazard. So basically, I'm gonna go ahead and recommend the 10 songs out of 20 I recommend on here. So there are some ones, but some of these are kind of repeat songs because they're on the albums that are not on the. Some of these songs are not exclusive to like this soundtrack. They're on the albums that the artist dropped with the single that they had around this particular time. So it's just kind of the concept, but I'll still go ahead and recommend the 10 songs out of 20 I recommend. That's good, but it's haphazard like I was saying. So basically the 10 songs I recommend would be How Can I Live by El Nino, When Darkness Falls by Killswitch Engage, Beginning of the End by Spine Shank, Sun Doesn't Rise by Mushroom Head, Bombshell by Powerman 5000, Out of My Way by Seether, Inside the Cynic by Stone Sour, The Waste by Sepultura, Middle of Nowhere by the Blank Theory, and Ether by Nothing Face. That's kind of the concept about this particular project. So basically, I'm going to talk about some of the songs I don't recommend on here before we get the songs I do recommend, just because it's a little bit easier to get those out of the way, I would have to suppose. So some of these, like I was kind of disappointed by the Seven Dust song. I do kind of remember them. They were kind of a new metal band that I remember from back when I was reviewing a bunch of new metal back in 2015, 2016. I want to say I reviewed like their 1999 and 2002 albums, something like that. They used to kind of do a little bit of new metal. Remember some of their stuff, but they kind of had a disappointing song on here that just didn't really fit the theme of this particular album. I feel like definitely the sort of stuff that needed to be on this album was more of like fight type music and nightclub type music. There are songs on this album that try to be replicated on here. Like one particular song I feel like was very popular around this particular time that unfortunately because of a death was not able to happen. But if you recall the song by Drowning Pool, Bodies, which is Let the Bodies Hit the Floor, which had Dave Williams. Dave Williams was the one that wrote that song, and he passed, so he was not able to ever do like another hit song like that apart from the ones off of the Sinner album from 2001. So that I really feel like the after effect of Drowning Pool's Bodies kind of somewhat relishes on this particular project, where a few bands try to replicate that particular song somewhat. I mean, it's not full blown where every single song tries to copy that song, but there are some ones on here. Like I kind of feel like Beginning of the End kind of does that. Little bit of like, just some of these ones on here, maybe Condemned. I kind of feel like to a lesser extent When Darkness Falls kind of does that just within particular. I mean, that one's kind of a more screamo type one. That one's a little bit more shredding type energy, but you may find some ones on here that just kind of have that after effect of just like Drowning Pool's Bodies as far as that pitch can have with it. And I would have to say, like the other thing I was gonna say is just this album really needs like some fight type music. It definitely needs like some fight type music, just something that would get things started, just some Hell in the Cell kind of fight type music, like Marilyn Manson's fight music from Hollywood, some of those type pitches, just something that really has that high octane type energy. One of the best songs on this particular album that I'm fairly certain is like an exclusive song to this soundtrack is When Darkness Falls. That has some of the most manic energy. Makes sense that it's the second song you hear on here because it's just an overall exhilarating type one, and just gets really is attention grabbing. I would have to say it's just kind of the concept about it. Definitely needed way more songs like this. But then Spine Shank's kind of Beginning of the End's a pretty nice one, despite the fact that it kind of has some good similarities to Drowning Pool's Bodies. I feel like this is a real good highlight that just has a lot of good affability about it. It kind of feels like a new metal type song, but it works as like a real good rock kind of nightclub song. It really works as like a real good rock kind of nightclub song, which I do like. I do appreciate rock nightclub songs that just have a pretty fitting type feel about them. So this is kind of constant to get one of those. But yeah, so we'll go ahead and talk about some of these songs I recommend on here. Basically, When Darkness Falls by Killswitch Engage is pretty much one of the best songs in the album. Like I was saying, this is like a shredding kind of Hell in the Cell like craze of a song. I'd have to say this is just a good metal turn up type song. I would definitely feel like, and this is just a great song to get you pumped. I would feel like so. It just has a lot of good manic energy. Definitely really kicks off the pace of the album. I would have to say in particular, it's definitely a manic type one that definitely fits the theme of the particular movie. I'd have to say in particular, you can definitely see like folks running from Freddy or Jason in this particular movie, just some of that particular type pitch. This would be a great song to kind of have for some of that horror type craze as far as that kind of goes along with it. It's a real nice one. Just some real Hell in the Cell type stuff, just for a wild kind of fight night, type craze as far as that pitch can have with it. Just some great stuff. Definitely some Smokage, just backyard type craze as far as that pitch can have. Just some manic type energy. Another good highlight on here is Beginning of the End by Spine Shank. Definitely appreciate this one. It's like a nightclub kind of gem, I'd have to say. It reminds me of Bodies, like I was definitely saying. It's just good concept for that by Drowning Pool. I would have to say it's just an energizing kind of shrill pitch that this song kind of particularly has, and this is an overall kind of stellar song. So it definitely has the same aesthetic as like that new metal song by Drowning Pool. I would have to say, just in particular, just has that same kind of manic type feel about it. Just really right down to the energy and this core tone of that particular song. This works pretty damn well just within that relative concept. It's a real nice Apple type one. Definitely appreciate the mood of this particular one. It's just some good stuff. Just kind of have that leftover after effect. Just I really feel like Let the Bodies Hit the Floor would be a pretty good highlight to hear in like the Freddy vs. Jason movie. I'm not sure if it was in that particular film, but it just has that same sort of concept. You could definitely see like some movie type jokes kind of going in with that. Just like movie type memes of obviously characters like Freddy Krueger and Jason, some of those type folks just being able to have like a manic type something, some sort of joke or some sort of apparel to like let the bodies hit the floor, something like that. Just would seem like there'd be some jokes towards that, but I just would have to say beginning of the end's a pretty fitting type song that has that sort of pitch. Sun Doesn't Rise by Mushroomhead's a pretty highlighted one. Mushroomhead's obviously a pretty creeping and just overall ghastly type band, so they definitely have some pretty manic type stuff. Definitely appreciate the stuff that they've done. This like a stellar kind of evening energy, I would have to say. This is a good Kickstarter, I would definitely feel like, and this is just a social gem, and it's very Disturbed like, I would have to say. The band Disturbed, I definitely feel like they have some pretty good pitches, just that kind of screamo type tone that like David Draymond kind of does in particular, just within that relative fold. Just some good concepts, kind of get that one in particular. Just a real manic type one. Usually Mushroomhead reminds me more of Korn, I would have to say, but this is one in particular that really reminded me of something by Disturbed, something like that. Like that one particular song, I forget what it's called, like definitely had similarities to Down with the Sickness, I would have to say in particular. So that's a pretty good highlighted type one. How Can I Live by El Nino is a pretty highlighted one. It's like a glaring kind of evening haze of a song, I'd have to say. It's like a good smoke one, kind of shindig gem, I would definitely feel like. And this song has bustle, and it's pretty good for like the work shift, I'd have to say. This is definitely some good evening malaise. This one doesn't quite feel as suited to the movie, just because this was originally on like the El Nino album, so it's just a little bit more particular about that particular fold, I would have to say. But still pretty nice glaring type one. Just works for like some decent kind of makeshift work shift type tone as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. Just some good kind of glaring, just got done with work type pitch as far as that particular kind of goes. This is a pretty highlighted one. This is kind of the concept that it's not an exclusive to this album, I'd have to say. So this is kind of the concept about it. But same thing can be said about Bombshell by Powerman 5000. Now the thing about this particular song is just the fact that it's kind of pseudo and exclusive, just because the album that this was originally hosted on didn't come out. It was kind of a canceled album. Anyone for Doomsday got canceled in 2001. So it's this kind of concept that you can find it here if you don't want to. Like Anyone for Doomsday was eventually available on CD, but it's pretty expensive. You have to pay like over $100, something like that, or $80, something in that relative pitch. It's a little bit more expensive a connotation to kind of get for that, but it's just a good concept. It's still a pretty good song, I'd have to say. You can get this song if you just want the one single, because there's only one single off of Anyone from Doomsday. Maybe there were two, but for the most part only one single charted. So Bombshell's that one, and Bombshell's pretty highly one. This is like an exhilarating kind of night venue noise with song, I'd have to say. This song just has some manic energy, I would definitely feel like, and this is just classic Powerman 5000, I'd have to say in particular. And this is a pretty underrated hit, I would definitely feel like. The thing about Powerman 5000, they're basically known for their biggest hit, which is off the Tonight the Stars Revolt album. I forget what it's called. They had two singles off that particular album. I'm kind of forgetting them at this particular stage, but there were two of them. Like, this computer doesn't really have internet right now, so I can't really look it up, but it came out in 1999. It's just kind of the pitch behind it. Pretty big song, I would have to say. There were two singles off that particular album. I'll probably list them in like the annotation, I'd have to say, but it's just some good concepts to kind of get those. But Bombshell's a pretty nice one. It's just pretty good bop. Pretty much the most exhilarating type song off this album, I'd have to say, just in terms of like a standard sense. This one definitely has the most marketable single type feel. This one's not really like a demonic kind of song. This one's really not like a demonic and kind of Hell in the Cell type song like what fits the theme of the movie, I'd have to say, but this is not really like a demonic type song that fits like the theme of the movie, I'd have to say, but it's still a pretty dope song to get in particular. So it's a good fitting type one for this particular project, but it's just not with the normal theme of it, I'd have to say. But I do recommend it. So once again, if you can't find it anywhere else, it's a good spot to get it. And then Out of My Way is a pretty nice song. This is by Seether. This is a pretty good highlight if you don't want to get like the deluxe edition of their 2004 album, I'd have to say in particular. So this is a good concept. Basically, Out of My Way is like a moody kind of smoke a few commotion song, I would have to say. Out of My Way is like a moody kind of smoke a few commotion of a song. I'd have to say it's like a good shredding that this song particularly kind of has, and this is just like some hazy kind of summer energy, I would have to suppose, and this song is pretty gnarled. So I like this one. Definitely like the typical kind of Seether type feel. This just reminds me of like a backyard kind of smoke session, something like that. Just having barbecue, some things like that. Just getting some swishers lit, having some burgers, some of those type pitches, just some lemonade, stuff like that. Just really kick back just in like the summer energy. Just a real hazy type song that just has a good amount of gnarledness. Basically, like if you like something like Slipknot or Stone Sour, but you want it with a little bit more relaxation towards it and a little bit more of a haziness, this would be a pretty good concept. Because Seether gets pretty heavy just within that concept, but it just is kind of more laid back, just in a more kind of hangout type connotation, I suppose. That's a good concept. But Inside the Cynic by Stone Sour is a pretty highlighted one also. This is definitely one of the best beats on the album. Inside the Cynic is definitely one of the best songs on the album, I'd have to say. And I want to say that this song is an exclusive, so it's definitely one to pick up this particular project for, just because this one is one that you get. This like a secret kind of Stone Sour song, which works pretty well. They've kind of been here and there in recent times, I'd have to say, but the concept behind it is this like a demonic kind of shredding that this song particularly kind of has. It's like a rowdy kind of late evening turn up. It's like a rowdy kind of late evening turn up of a song, I'd have to say, and this song gets manic pretty quickly, and it's just a pretty good headbanger, I'd have to say. So it's a dope concept, typical kind of Corey Taylor type stuff, just within that fashion, just to really get some demonic type stuff just within that pitch. Just the shredding is off the scale in this particular song. It's really has some good craziness, like Slipknot, but just a little bit more oriented, a little bit more kind of crafted, just for like, Stone Sour is kind of like Slipknot, just more oriented toward Stone Sour is like Slipknot, just more oriented towards radio as far as that pitch can have. So it's just the same concept here, just this one's pretty manic, I'd have to say. So I do like that one. Definitely fits the theme of like the album, definitely fits the theme of like the movie, I'd have to say, in particular. The Waste is a pretty highlighted one. This is a Sepultura song. Definitely like this one. It's like a leery, kind of heavy, smokish, kind of voodoo, I would have to say, in particular. Definitely appreciate this one quite a bit. It's like a great backyard kind of summer shindig type tune, I would have to say. This is just a pretty good hangout gem. So yeah, basically Sepultura kind of has like a tribal type tune on here that works pretty damn well just within that pitch. Just some backyard smokish and snackish type tunes, just to kind of get in like an evening sense. It's a real good backyard party type thrill as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. Just some real kind of manic type stuff. Works with Inside the Cynic and some of those type ones. And I would probably say there's some other ones on here like Middle of Nowhere is a pretty good one for that pitch. I feel like the Mushroom Head song's a pretty good one for that pitch. I feel like Out of My Way is a pretty good one for that pitch. So the Seether song, the Stone Sour song, the Sepultura song are just some good. These are just some excellent kind of backyard party type songs to kind of have for some smokish and snackish, things like that. Just real have burgers and smokish, things like that, just within that relative pitch. So some great stuff there. This real pounding type instrumentation, I'd have to say. The band work on these songs are pretty excellent. Like Stone Sour obviously is, Seether obviously is, Sepultura obviously is. These are just some excellent type ones to get here. Mushroom Head has some excellent band work, and then like Bombshell by Powerman 5000 is just an oriented type club song, just crafted for radio as far as that pitch can happen. So it's just some good stuff here with the band work, I'd have to say. Definitely some good shredding and stuff like that. Middle of Nowhere is a pretty highlighted one. This is definitely probably one of my favorite songs on this particular album, I'd have to say, in particular. Really appreciated this one. It's by the Blank Theories. I don't really know them that well, but I'm going to have to possibly look into them as far as that pitch can happen. This is like a haunting kind of alternative metal song, I would have to say. It's pretty similar to Korn, I would have to say, in particular. Definitely reminds me of them. And this is just like a nice freakish glare. And this song is just a nice freakish kind of glare hit, I would have to say, just in particular. So I definitely appreciate the instrumentation of this particular song and the band work and stuff like that. Just the overall appeal of this song is pretty high. Like I said, this is one of my favorite songs in the album, so I do want to see what's up with the Blank Theory, some stuff like that. Just some good stuff there to kind of get. Definitely like folks that are similar to Korn, just would have to say. I'm surprised that Korn wasn't on this particular album. Maybe they were a little bit leery. I feel like Freddy and Jason are not so much of like head case type music as much as they are just gnarled kind of craziness. So it's just kind of a concept. You need someone a little bit more of like a clean cleave, something like that, just within that relative atmosphere, something more Slipknot oriented, something like that, or Mushroom Head, some of those type folks. Korn's a little bit more of like a head case, but I just look at it, there's still some good concepts. The Blank Theory do a pretty good job replacing Korn, so it's a good concept. And then Ether is a pretty highlighted one. Now, this is by Nothing Face. This is another song that was off the album, so it wasn't really an exclusive. I still like this song. It's like a forlorn, kind of angsty work shift haze of a song, I'd have to say. It's like a good 5 p.m. kind of malaise, I would have to say, in particular. And this song kind of works in like a late summer sense, I'd have to say. Something for like late August, September, early October, some of those type pitches, I would have to say, in particular. And this is a pretty steadfast song, so it's a pretty nice one. This one's like a good pairing with How Can I Live. So I do like some of these kind of makeshift type songs just to kind of get in like an evening sense, just within that relative turn up, just within that relative atmosphere, just kind of the concept. Because I do feel like this is kind of, I feel like Freddy vs. Jason can kind of be like a work shift type movie just within that sense. It felt like the folks that were running away from Freddy and Jason were kind of blue collar as far as that pitch kind of particularly having with it, but still the same concept of kind of get some of these makeshift type songs. This kind of it's an extra sense. I would have liked exclusive songs. I would have had them in a worship type sense if they would have just picked some songs and had some exclusives that would have been in like the evening makeshift and worship. I would have definitely said that could have worked like a lot more extremely, I'd have to say. So that's kind of the concept about it. But so to talk about some of the songs I didn't recommend on here, basically just the concept about this particular album is just the fact that there just are some songs on here. There just are some songs on here that just don't add up to much. They just have poor instrumentation or just overall engagement factor about some of these. They just kind of feel pedestrian. They just don't really get things revved as quite. They just don't really get things revved quite as well as they need to. Like the Slipknot song was just already a song that was like, I think it was just the 97 demo, something that was originally on the 1999 album, just was not quite as good. Probably should have just been like a leftover song, something like that. I know Slipknot probably had way more songs that they probably could have thrown on here and just given this album like an exclusive that probably would have sold some copies for this particular soundtrack, some stuff like that. I mean, there's really no reason. I mean, the Freddy vs. Jason franchise is big enough to the point where both of these franchises, Freddy Krueger and Jason, probably had enough money to be able to get like these exclusive songs and just have some stuff like that. It's just kind of the concept. I don't know why they didn't get an exclusive song from El Nino. I don't know why they didn't get an exclusive song from Mushroom Head. I don't know why they didn't get an exclusive song from El Nino. I don't know why they didn't get an exclusive song from Mushroom Head. Some of those type folks, you know, stuff like that. I'd probably have to say that like Power Man 5000, same sort of concept, just within that relative pitch. It's just kind of, I mean, there are some ones on here that are good. I definitely appreciate some of these ones. Like I do definitely feel like the Stone Sour and Sepultura songs are worth purchasing this album for, especially 21 years later within that pitch, just to kind of get that. It's either the Stone Sour and Sepultura song are worth it, and I would have to say possibly the Blank Theory if that one's not to be found anywhere else. I would say like Spine Shank and Killswitch Engage are some nice ones also that are kind of some good exclusives just to get within that relative pitch. But it's just kind of the concept. I feel like it's got some good stuff on here that, I mean, some of the heavy hitters on here really do deliver. It's just kind of the concept. There is some pedestrian type feels on here that just don't really suit the energy of this particular album. It's just kind of the concept. There's just some half-baked type ones. Like the Typo Negative song was just too lengthy. I just would have to suppose really didn't need to be 6 minutes 50 seconds as far as that pitch can have. With the Typo Negative typically kind of has lengthier songs, but I just don't really appreciate that concept quite as much, I would have to say. And there's just some ones on here, like I was saying, the Seven Dust song was kind of a disappointment. The From Autumn to Ashes song was kind of a disappointment. I just didn't really like the production arrangements of that particular one. There just were some ones on here that were just kind of haphazard and just didn't really match the energy of some of the best moments. I definitely think they needed more moments, like Beginning of the End and When Darkness Falls. Those are two of the best moments, and they're right at the beginning and just have the most immediate type feel. And there's definitely some good hangout type songs on here by Stone Sour and Sepultura. They're great for some backyard smoke sessions. There's some songs by Sepultura and Stone Sour that are great for some backyard smoke sessions as far as that pitch can have with this. There's just some great stuff here to kind of get within that relative sense, but still, I mean, it's just kind of dicey. It's just the concept. There are some good moments on here. You just have to search for them a bit. You have to know the ones that you're looking for. I do feel like some of these more flatter type songs do work in like a relative sense if you're just looking for something that has some degree of like turn up. I mean, I feel like some of the shredding on here, a lot of these songs are just kind of clones of like songs like When Darkness Falls, just not as good, I would have to suppose, in particular. Just kind of the energy is somewhat carried, but it's kind of more haphazard and less distinct, I would have to suppose. So it does have some of that shredding type energy and just overall fight type music, Hell in the Cell type music that's known for like the movie and the pitch of the theme of the movie and stuff like that, just within a horrific type tone. So it's kind of the concept, but I just didn't see much distinction in it for the most part, just within that relative pitch. But this is a good project. I would still purchase this just to be able to say it's just kind of dicey, but. So I'm going to score this album, me basically recommending 10 songs out of 20 on this particular album. And on top of that, some of these are not exclusives just on top of that. So this is kind of the concept. I think I'm going to go ahead and give this album, like a 5.75 out of 10. I would give it a higher score if it had less songs and more hits. Like if I would have liked 10 out of 17, this definitely would have gotten a higher score just in that relative pitch. And this definitely would have gotten more of a favorable type score, but it's just the fact that there's so many songs on here and not all of them really hit. And some of these are just more haphazard and stuff like that. And there's just not enough exclusives. So 5.75 out of 10. It's a little bit over middle of the road. I like this. I mean, I realized I liked exactly half the songs on here, but it is a little bit above average just within a relative pitch, but it just doesn't full-blown jump off the pages quite as near as it needs to. But I would have to say about the social score, I'm going to go ahead and say the social score is going to get a higher score. I'm going to give the social score like a 6.75 out of 10 because there are some social gems on here. I do feel like the energy of this particular album, I do feel like the energy of this particular soundtrack is pretty carried pretty well. I'd have to say I just like the concept of it just just a lot of manicness, just the overall theme and thrillness of it. It has the exhilaration factor. It is attention grabbing. It's just the fact that these songs just don't always deliver. It's just kind of the concept. It keeps the attention. It has the ability. This album, like the movie, is kind of more style over substance. This kind of concept that has style and like the sense of having some of the appeal. The band work is good for most of this album in particular. It's just the fact that the distinction in some of these songs just don't really add up to much as far as that pitch counts. But there is some casual and social appeal, I'd have to say, in particular. So it's just a good concept about that. So I'd have to say, in terms of the future, there's not really a future towards it because this is kind of a one-off type movie, I'd have to say. So it's just kind of concept about that. There might have been a Freddy vs. Jason sequel. I'm not really sure. There might have been a Freddy vs. Jason 2, but I'm not really full-blown sure. I know that there was at least an Alien vs. Predator that came out the next year, but it's just kind of the concept that there are more Freddy movies, more Jason movies, stuff like that. But in terms of like another soundtrack and stuff like that, I don't really think there was one as much. But it's still warranted enough to purchase. There are some decent gems on here just within a relative pitch. Probably could have used more exclusives, probably could have used a little bit more distinction, stuff like that. But this is pretty stylish album, does have the social kind of suaveness and appeal about it, and just overall the manic energy that just is exciting. This album is just exciting and attention grabbing. So it's just kind of the concept about it. So I recommend this within a relative sense, but just be prepared to know that it's just somewhat haphazard. And it's kind of somewhat haphazard, and it's not a full blown KO, I'd have to say.